I overheard my parents making fun of my work, acting like I was beneath them. That same night, they were confronted mid-gala, right in front of investors. I calmly said, "Tonight, I'm not your daughter, I'm your landlord." Can you believe what my own parents tried to pull? They were literally plotting to publicly humiliate me, their own daughter, just to save their crumbling art gallery. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I wasn't just their easy target anymore. I was already holding the eviction notice, and my finger was hovering over that send button. It was 9 o'clock at night, and I was sitting in my Ford F-250, engine idling, headlights off, just completely invisible in the shadows of the Miller estate. Through the windshield, I could see them, Preston and Genevieve, my parents, on the balcony, champagne glasses glinting, their laughter echoing across the manicured lawn I used to mow for free. My phone screen glowed with the words, "Project Oakroot, execute eviction." My other hand was gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. The truck smelled like potting soil and diesel. Mud caked on the floor mats. My boots had left prints all over the pedals. "I was going to save you," I whispered to the glass, but then I remembered. Then I heard what you said. Just 12 hours earlier, I was pruning a Japanese maple when Genevieve called. "No hello, no, how are you?" Just her voice, sharp as pruning shears. "Delilah, I need you to bring the juniper bonsai tonight." I paused mid-cut, phone wedged between my shoulder and ear. The greenhouse was humid, glass walls fogged with condensation, my hands still stained from repotting succulents. "The gala's tonight?" I asked. "Obviously," she shot back. 40 years of the Miller Art Gallery. We're expecting investors." Then her tone shifted to that condescending, patient voice I knew so well, like she was explaining basic math to a slow child. "You owe us this much, Delilah. After everything." Those words just settled in my chest like a pile of stones. I looked at the bonsai. 5 years of careful cultivation. A competition winner. Valued at $8,000. The branches twisted just right, each needle placed by nature and my own endless patience. It sat there on the display table, bathed in perfect afternoon light, roots anchored in soil I'd mixed myself. "It's not really appropriate for a centerpiece," I tried to explain. "It needs specific conditions." "Don't be difficult," Genevieve's voice hardened. "We're cash poor right now, and we need to impress the Vanderbilts. Bring the tree." 6 o'clock. She hung up before I could even respond. I should have said no. I should have just laughed and gone back to work. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there in my greenhouse, surrounded by 200 plants I'd grown from seeds and cuttings. Me, the owner of a business that cleared 6 figures last year. And I felt 14 again. 14, when I'd given up my art scholarship so Merrick could go to private school. 14, when Preston had patted my shoulder and said, "That's my girl. Family first." I never got another scholarship. Merrick got his architecture degree. The pattern was always the same. I was the helper, never the helped. But maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe if I brought the bonsai, if I showed up and contributed something valuable, they'd finally see me. Really see me. "Maybe this time they'll see me," I whispered to the empty greenhouse. Then, I wrapped the bonsai in protective cloth and loaded it into my F-250. By 6:15, I was pulling up to the Miller estate. Not the grand main entrance, you know, with the circular driveway and the fountain. No, the service entrance. Around back, where the caterers parked. My brother, Merrick, was waiting there, leaning against the brick wall in designer shoes that probably cost more than my monthly insurance payment. He watched me park, then walked over and actually kicked dirt off my front tire with the tip of his Italian leather. "Stay out of sight tonight," he said. "The adults are doing business." I'm 27. He's 30. But in his eyes, I saw it clearly. I wasn't an adult. I was the help. I bit back my response and started unloading the bonsai. 40 pounds of tree and ceramic pot. I carried it alone while Merrick watched, hands in his pockets. As I positioned the truck, I glanced toward the main entrance. The Vanderbilts were arriving early, stepping out of a black Mercedes. Old money always recognizes desperate money. I saw it in the way they whispered to each other, the subtle eyebrow raise as Preston greeted them too loudly, laughing too hard. His tuxedo was nice, but I noticed the cuffs were slightly frayed. The family reputation was already cracking, but Preston was too blind to see it. Genevieve appeared at the service door as I was carrying the bonsai up the steps. She didn't offer to help. Didn't even hold the door open. "You're late," she said. "And couldn't you have worn something presentable?" I looked down at my work jeans. My flannel shirt. I'd come straight from a job site, my hands still smelling like mulch. For a moment, I almost wavered. Almost considered driving home to change into something she'd approve of. Then I just studied. "I'm delivering a tree, Mother. Not attending your party." Her face tightened, lips pressing into a thin line. But I didn't apologize. Didn't collapse into the old pattern of people-pleasing. Small victory. Preston appeared in the doorway behind her. He looked right past me, his eyes moving straight to the bonsai like I was invisible. "This will do," he said, inspecting the branches. "The Vanderbilts appreciate Eastern aesthetics." No thank you. No acknowledgement that I'd just given them an $8,000 centerpiece for free. Merrick followed us inside, a smirk playing on his lips. At least she's useful for something. My hands trembled as I set the tree down on the main hall table. The realization hit me, clean and sharp, my family takes. They never give. They never, ever give. Now, sitting in my truck in the darkness, I looked at that phone screen again, my thumb still hovering. Through the windshield, Preston raised his glass. Genevieve laughed at something a guest said. They had no idea I was out here. No idea what was coming. I pressed send. Another memory flashed back. It was 6:45. I was positioning the bonsai on the main hall table, adjusting the angle so the twisted trunk faced the entrance. My fingers brushed the lowest branch, checking moisture levels out of habit. The ceramic pot left a ring of condensation on the polished mahogany. That's when I heard them. Preston's voice carried from the private viewing room. The door was cracked open. A sharp whine of microphone feedback cut the air, then settled. They were testing the sound system. Slide 14. Perfect. I froze, my hands still touching the branch. The wood was smooth under my fingertips, bark worn soft from 5 years of careful training. Merrick's voice answered, amplified by the speakers. The visuals tell the story we need. Something in his tone made my spine straighten. I should have kept working. Should have finished arranging the tree and left through the service entrance like I was supposed to. Instead, I moved closer. The hallway mirror caught my reflection as I approached. Flannel shirt, jeans with mud stains on the knees, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. I looked exactly like what I was, someone who works with her hands. The slideshow clicked. Once. Twice. Through the crack in the door, I saw the projection screen glowing bright in the dim room. Merrick stood there in a tailored suit, holding some crystal award. The photo caption read, "The Visionary. Merrick Miller receives Architecture Excellence Award." Click. The next slide loaded. It was me. I was covered in pond muck, mud streaked across my face, kneeling beside a retention pond, mid-laugh at something off camera. My work clothes were filthy. My hair was falling out of its tie. I looked happy, completely unself-conscious. I remembered when that photo was taken. Last spring. The Hendersons' backyard pond had clogged, and I'd spent 3 hours elbow-deep in algae and silt. Mrs. Henderson had laughed at something I'd said and snapped the picture. Said I looked like I was having the time of my life. Preston's voice broke the silence. It was his presentation voice. Rehearsed. Polished. The tone he uses when he's about to close a deal. We'll tell the investors. This is why we don't let children play in the dirt. A pause for effect. It proves we have standards. Merrick laughed. The sound echoed off the viewing room walls. Should we mention she charges people for this? He was really enjoying himself now. Actual money for manual labor. They were both laughing, practicing their timing, getting the rhythm just right so the joke landed perfectly when the investors were watching. My breath caught. The bonsai branch slipped from my fingers. Preston continued. The contrast is essential. Merrick's sophistication versus. Another calculated pause, whatever Delilah is doing with her life. The words hung in the air. Clinical. Precise. This wasn't angry mockery. It was strategy. She's our cautionary tale, Merrick said. Visual proof that the Miller family has standards. That we recognize quality. The Vanderbilts will appreciate it, Preston added. They'll see we're not sentimental about failure. My hand found the wall. The plaster was cool, solid. I needed something steady because the whole room felt like it was tilting. This wasn't about proving anything to me. It wasn't even really about me. I was a prop. A before and after comparison. The photograph that makes Merrick look better by contrast. That photo would be seen by every investor in that room. By the Vanderbilts. By Newport's entire elite circle. They'd all laugh at the mud-covered girl who thinks she's worth something. I caught my reflection in the mirror again. Same flannel shirt. Same work jeans. But the woman looking back at me was different than the one who walked into this building an hour ago. Something crystallized. Sharp and clear and absolutely certain. I didn't want their approval anymore. The realization didn't come with anger. Not yet. Just cold, perfect understanding. I'm not their daughter tonight. I'm their visual aid. My hands were steady as I walked back to the hall. The bonsai sat on the table exactly where I left it. $8,000 of patient cultivation. 5 years of careful work. I lifted it. 40 pounds of ceramic and soil and living wood. The weight settled familiar in my arms. No one saw me walk through the service corridor. The caterers were busy in the kitchen. The florists were arranging centerpieces in the side rooms. I pushed through the service entrance with my shoulder. A caterer glanced up from her van. She was young, maybe 20. Her eyes went to my face, then to the bonsai. Miss Miller, is everything all right? My voice came out level. Measured. The centerpiece won't work after all. She saw something in my expression, didn't ask questions, just nodded and went back to unloading champagne flutes. Small moment, but it mattered. Human decency versus family cruelty. The difference was stark. The truck bed was exactly where I left it. I settled the bonsai carefully, wrapped the protective blanket around the pot. My hands knew this routine. I'd transported this tree dozens of times. The engine started on the first try. Through the windshield, I could see the main hall windows. The display table sat empty now. Just a ring of water condensation where the tree stood. The dashboard clock read 7:15. Guests would arrive in 45 minutes. My phone buzzed. Genevieve's name lit up the screen. I silenced it. The tears came as I was pulling onto Ocean Avenue. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Adrenaline was crashing through my system now that I was alone. But underneath the tears, something else was forming. Something harder than grief. Colder than anger. I didn't just take back a tree. I took back myself. By 7:45, I was pulling into the gravel lot at Verdant Horizons. My commercial greenhouse glowed amber in the dusk, interior lights reflecting off glass panels. My hands were still shaking on the steering wheel. The F-250's engine ticked as it cooled. I sat there, staring at the building I built from nothing. 2 acres of glass and steel. 3 full-time employees. Last year's revenue? $847,000. None of it mattered right now. Through the windshield, I saw movement. Hank and Sarah were still here, working late on the Pemberton Estate installation. Hank was loading river stones into the bed of the company truck. Sarah was coiling irrigation line. They spotted my truck. Both stopped mid-task. Hank walked over first, work gloves still on, concern already creasing his weathered face. He's 62, been with me since the beginning. Boss, what happened? I tried to answer. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. Sarah appeared at the passenger window with a bottle of water. Didn't ask permission. Just opened the door and handed it to me. She's younger than Hank, maybe 45, but has the same steady presence. The kind of person who knows when to speak and when to just be there. I took the water. My voice finally worked. They were going to use me, in a slideshow, to mock me, in front of investors. The words sounded thin and inadequate. They didn't capture the rehearsal. I overheard Preston's voice, dripping with practiced humor, Merrick's cruel laughter. Hank's jaw tightened. Sarah's hand found my shoulder, warm through my flannel shirt. Come inside, Sarah said. I followed them into the greenhouse. The air smelled like peat moss and green growth. Rows of seedlings in their trays, each one labeled in my handwriting. This was real. This was mine. Not the Miller Art Gallery, with its borrowed prestige and unpaid debts. We walked to the workbench area. I leaned against the potting table, still holding the water bottle. I asked Silas to come, I said. If things went bad tonight. Good, Hank said. He pulled up a work stool, gestured for me to sit. I shook my head. Can't sit. Too much adrenaline. Then Hank did something unexpected. He knelt down in front of me and started unlacing my boots. You don't have to, I started. He pulled a rag from his back pocket and wiped the heavy muck from the leather. He didn't make them new, just knocked off the filth. Clean slate, boss. Or close enough. The words hit somewhere deep. Preston never cleaned anything. Never knelt for anyone. Never showed care through action. Sarah's hand stayed on my shoulder. They were both just waiting. Not demanding explanations. Not rushing me. Just present. The greenhouse door opened. Silas Thorne walked in, carrying his leather portfolio, still in his suit from whatever courtroom he'd left early. He's 53. My corporate attorney for 4 years now. Sharp mind, sharper instincts. Delilah. He set the portfolio on the workbench. Talk to me. So I did. The whole thing spilled out. Genevieve's demand for the bonsai. The slideshow rehearsal. Preston and Merrick laughing about using my photo as a cautionary tale. The empty centerpiece table I left behind. Silas listened without interrupting. When I finished, he opened the portfolio and spread documents across the workbench. Oakroot Holdings, LLC, he said. Sarah leaned closer, studying the papers. What's Project Oakroot? Silas glanced at me. I nodded. 6 months ago, he explained. Preston's bank threatened foreclosure on the Miller estate. The property was leveraged beyond capacity. Delilah bought the distressed debt through a shell company I set up. Hank whistled low. You on their debt? $125,000 in unpaid back rent, I said. My voice sounded hollow. I'm their landlord. They never knew. Sarah's hand tightened on my shoulder. Not judgment. Support. You were saving them, Silas said quietly. I thought if I proved myself successful enough. I stopped. The sentence didn't need finishing. They were never going to see you, Delilah. Silas's voice was gentle but firm. I've been telling you that for months. The truth landed like a physical weight. He was right. He'd been right. I just wasn't ready to hear it. My phone buzzed. Genevieve. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered and put it on speaker. Where's the tree? Her voice was shrill enough to make Sarah wince. Guests are asking questions. I took it home, Mother. Silence. Then the explosion. You selfish, ungrateful. The insults poured out. Trash. Embarrassment. Failure. Words she'd probably thought for years, finally unleashed. Hank and Sarah stood perfectly still, witnessing. You've ruined everything. Genevieve spat. Don't bother coming back. She hung up. The greenhouse went quiet, except for the ventilation system's hum. Silas opened his laptop. I can email the eviction notice right now. His cursor hovered over send. I stared at the screen. The legal document was already prepared, professionally formatted, legally airtight, 6 months of planning reduced to 1 mouse click. Then I shook my head. An email is too easy. Silas looked up. They want to humiliate me publicly? My voice hardened. I need to look them in the eye when I take it all back. Sarah spoke first. What do you need from us? Say the word, boss. Hank was already standing straighter. Silas was already thinking tactically. The gala ends at 11. What are you planning? Process server. I met his eyes. Can you arrange one? He smiled. Actually smiled. I know exactly the right person. The shift in the room was palpable. We weren't grieving anymore. We were strategizing. I stood up straight, wiped my face with the back of my hand. Looked at the 3 of them. My lawyer. My foreman. My forewoman. This was my real family. Not the people who shared my blood but never my burdens. They wanted me invisible, I said. They're about to see me very clearly. Sarah walked to the office closet and pulled out a simple black dress, still in dry cleaning plastic. You left this here last month. After the Chamber of Commerce dinner. I took it. Changed right there in the greenhouse, not bothering with modesty. Sarah and Hank turned away out of habit, but Silas kept working on his laptop, already briefing someone on the phone. The dress fit. Knee-length. Professional. Unremarkable. Then I strapped my boots back on underneath the hem. Silas ended his call. Process server will pose as a late-arriving guest. Eviction notice is prepared. I'm thinking timing during the keynote presentation. Maximum impact, I said. This is some strategic thinking, boss, Hank grinned. I learned from the best. I looked at Silas. Just not from them. By 8:40, I was climbing back into the F-250. The dress felt strange over my work clothes. The boots felt right. My phone screen glowed. Project Oak Root. Execute eviction. Through the commercial district, I could just see the Miller estate on the hill. The balcony where Preston and Genevieve were probably standing right now. Champagne glasses raised, convinced they'd won. Preston's arm probably around her shoulders. They were laughing. They thought I was broken. I was going to save you, I whispered to the windshield. But then I heard what you said. My thumb hovered over send. I pressed it. The screen confirmed. Process server dispatched. ETA, 9:45 p.m. I started the engine. The diesel rumbled to life, familiar and powerful. I wasn't driving back as a victim. I was driving back as a predator lying in wait. 9:20 p.m. I walked through the main entrance of the Miller Art Gallery for the first time in my life. The black dress Sarah pulled from the office closet fit well enough, skimming my knees, simple and severe. But underneath the hem, with each step across the marble floor, my heavy work boots thudded softly. No more mud prints, Hank saw to that, but the battered leather looked violent against the polished floors. Ancient and scarred amidst a sea of patent leather and silk. Nobody noticed yet. They were all too busy pretending not to stare at the centerpiece table. Someone had placed a generic crystal vase filled with store-bought white roses in the center. It looked small, pathetic even, against the grandeur of the hall. A desperate placeholder. The water ring from the massive bonsai pot was still faintly visible on the mahogany if you looked past the cloth runner. The room was packed. Investors in dark suits clustered near the bar. The Vanderbilts occupied the corner table, their posture radiating the kind of judgment only old money can afford. Newport's elite scattered throughout. Champagne glasses catching chandelier light. Genevieve spotted me first. Her face did something I'd never seen before. It contorted, twisted through shock into pure rage, then smoothed into a mask so quickly I almost doubted I saw it. She crossed the room in 4 seconds flat, heels clicking like gunshots. How dare you show your face? Her voice was low, venomous. Close enough that I could smell her perfume, expensive and cloying. I'm a Miller, I met her eyes. This is a Miller event. Her hand clamped around my upper arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You embarrassed us. That centerpiece cost us credibility. I didn't pull away. Didn't flinch. Did I? Or did you embarrass yourselves? Across the room, I caught the Vanderbilt matriarch watching us. Her expression was unreadable, but she was paying attention. They all were now. Genevieve's grip tightened. Then Preston saw me. He went still, champagne glass halfway to his lips. His eyes found Merrick at the podium, and something passed between them, some silent agreement that made my spine straighten. Preston moved toward Merrick with quick, urgent steps. They leaned close, whispering. Merrick glanced at me, and his smile was all teeth. They weren't waiting for the keynote anymore. I could see it in the way Merrick signaled the AV technician, the way Preston's jaw set with determination. They were moving up the schedule. They wanted to punish me now. Wanted to crush whatever brought me back here before I could speak, before I could explain the missing centerpiece. They needed me broken in front of these investors. Merrick approached the microphone. The feedback squealed once, and the room settled into expectant silence. Before we begin our formal remarks, he said, voice smooth and practiced, I'd like to share something with you all. The lights dimmed. The massive screen behind the podium illuminated, white and waiting. My heartbeat stayed steady. I'd been expecting this since I heard them rehearsing earlier, since I understood exactly what they thought of me. Merrick's photograph appeared first. Him in a tailored suit, accepting some architecture award, looking every inch the visionary they wanted him to be. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Then my photo replaced his. I was covered in pond muck, kneeling in wet soil, laughing at something Hank said off camera. My hair was plastered to my forehead. My hands were black with earth. The joy on my face was unguarded, genuine, completely unaware I was being photographed. The room rippled with uncomfortable laughter, not cruel yet, but uncertain. Waiting for context. Merrick leaned into the microphone. Some of us build legacies. He paused for effect, gestured to his award photo. Others just dig holes. The laughter grew louder, more confident now that they understood the joke. Preston stepped up beside Merrick, taking the microphone. This is what happens when you reject education. I stood in the center of the room. The spotlight found me somehow, probably Merrick's doing. Every face turned toward me, and I felt the weight of their judgment, like physical pressure. This was the moment they'd been building toward. Complete exposure. Total humiliation. I bowed my head slowly, let my shoulders slump, let my hands clasp in front of me, fingers twisting together like I was trying to hold myself together. To Preston, to Genevieve watching from the side, to Merrick at the podium, I looked exactly how they needed me to look. Broken, defeated, remembering my place. Preston and Genevieve exchanged glances across the room. Triumph gleamed in their eyes, bright and hungry. Merrick smirked from the podium, leaning back like he'd already won. At the bar, I caught them in my peripheral vision. Preston reached for his champagne, and Genevieve met him there. They clinked glasses with the delicate sound of crystal on crystal. Preston leaned close to her, his whisper carrying just far enough for me to hear. She needed to remember her place. Genevieve sipped, her lipstick leaving a mark on the rim. Maybe now she'll appreciate what real success looks like. They were drunk on it. The perceived power. The certainty that they'd put me back in the box where I belonged. Their guard was completely down. Near the Vanderbilt table, an older woman in pearls frowned at the screen. She leaned toward her companion, stage whispering, seems unnecessarily cruel. The Vanderbilt matriarch's face was stone. No smile. No approval. Just that careful neutrality that speaks volumes if you know how to read it. But Preston didn't notice. He was too focused on me, on my bowed head and slumped shoulders. His arrogance blinded him to the way the room's mood was shifting, the subtle discomfort spreading through the crowd. I kept my head down, kept playing the part. Then I checked my watch. 9:43, I lifted my gaze slowly, scanning the room until I found Silas near the entrance. He was dressed like any other guest, dark suit blending in perfectly. Our eyes met across the crowded space. I gave him the smallest nod, barely a movement at all. He nodded back. Stepped aside from the doorway. The door opened behind him. A man in a dark suit entered, moving with purpose. He didn't look around, didn't hesitate. Just walked forward like he knew exactly where he was going. I let my expression settle. Let something cold and final move behind my eyes. Preston turned back to the podium, oblivious. He took the microphone from Merrick, smiling at the crowd with complete confidence. Now, about our investment opportunity, he began. The man in the dark suit kept walking toward the stage. My scuffed boots stayed planted on the marble floor, and I didn't move. Preston stood at the podium like a king surveying his kingdom. The stage lights caught the silver threading in his tuxedo jacket, and he was smiling that practiced smile I'd seen 1,000 times. The one that says he's already won. The Miller family, he began, voice smooth as aged whiskey, represents 3 generations of refined taste. I was still standing in the center of the room where the slideshow left me. Head bowed, shoulders slumped, playing defeated. But I was watching the door. The man in the dark suit entered. He moved with purpose, not the casual drift of a late guest. The fabric of his jacket was quality but unremarkable. He could be anyone. Merrick noticed him first. I saw my brother's frown from across the room, the slight tilt of his head. He didn't recognize the man. Neither did Preston, who was still talking about legacy and vision, and all the empty words that built their hollow empire. The process server walked down the center aisle. His shoes were quiet on the polished floor. Dark suit blending with the other guests, but his trajectory was unmistakable, straight toward the stage. Preston stopped mid-sentence, looked up annoyed. He leaned into the microphone. Excuse me, this is a private event. The server didn't stop, didn't acknowledge the words at all, just kept walking, steady as a metronome. Preston's irritation bled into his voice. Sir, you need to leave. The room went quiet, conversations dying like candle flames in wind, everyone turning to watch. The server reached the stage steps, climbed them one at a time. Preston's face flushed red, his voice sharp now, amplified through those JBL speakers mounted in the corners. Get the hell off my stage, you peasant. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw the Vanderbilts exchange glances, eyebrows raised. There it was, the desperation, the crack in the veneer. But Preston didn't notice. He was too focused on this perceived threat to his authority. Do you know who I am? This is my gallery, my event. The microphone caught every word, broadcast his rage to every corner of the room. The server stopped 3 feet from Preston. When he spoke, his voice was calm, professional. But he was close enough to the podium that the microphone picked it up, amplified it. I know exactly who you are, Mr. Miller. He reached into his jacket. Preston flinched. But what emerged was just a legal envelope. Cream-colored paper, official seal, visible even from where I was standing. I am representing Oakroot Holdings. Preston's face shifted from anger to confusion. Oakroot? What? You are being served with an immediate eviction notice. The words hung in the air like smoke. I watched them register across the room, saw the way heads turned, mouths opened slightly. The server continued, and each word was a hammer blow. For $125,000 in unpaid back rent. The number echoed. $125,000. 6 figures. The kind of debt that destroys reputations. Behind Preston, my mud photo was still projected on the screen. Delilah, covered in pond muck, laughing. But the context had shifted. Flipped completely. Because the mud girl held their 6-figure debt. Preston's face drained of color. All that righteous anger bleeding away into something else. Something that looked like fear. The Vanderbilts stood. Both of them, moving in sync. They placed their napkins on the table with precise, deliberate movements. Then they walked toward the exit without a word. Not running. Old money doesn't run. But they were leaving. Avoiding contamination from this scandal. Other investors followed. I watched the social suicide happen in real time, exactly like Silas warned. The thing Preston feared most, manifesting right in front of him. This is a misunderstanding. Preston stammered into the microphone. His voice had lost all its polish. There's been some kind of mistake. The server's voice cut through his protests. Your lease is terminated effective immediately due to chronic non-payment. You have 48 hours to remove personal belongings. Genevieve's heels clicked on the floor. She was rushing toward the stage, her dress swishing around her legs. Who owns Oakroot? I demand to know. But the server wasn't finished. Legal ownership transferred to Oakroot Holdings 6 months ago. All correspondence regarding the debt was sent to your attorney of record. Preston grabbed for the papers. His hands were shaking so badly the envelope crumpled. He stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. I started walking. Not rushing. Just steady steps toward the stage. The crowd parted for me without being asked. Their faces had changed. They weren't looking at the mud girl anymore. They were seeing someone else entirely. I reached the base of the stage. Stopped there. Looked up. Preston's eyes met mine. I watched the realization dawn across his face. Saw the exact moment he understood. His whisper barely carried, even with the microphone. You. I didn't apologize. Don't explain or justify or make excuses. I just held his gaze for 3 long seconds. Let him see everything he missed. Everything he dismissed. Then I turned on my heel. The black dress swirled around my legs, and my battered work boots were visible for just a moment. The boots I wore on purpose. The boots I never apologized for. Silas fell in beside me as I walked toward the exit. His hand touched my back briefly. Steady. Supportive. At the door, I paused. Turned back to face the room. The investors were frozen, watching. Preston was collapsed in a chair. Merrick stood beside him, looking lost. Genevieve's mouth was open mid-scream. My voice carried across the silent room without needing a microphone. Clear. Calm. Final. The lease was always clear. I let the silence stretch. I'm not your daughter right now. Let them all hear what came next. I'm your landlord. Then I walked out. Behind me, Genevieve's scream finally broke free. The sound of someone watching their world crumble. The ruins of their ego scattered across that polished floor like broken glass. The door closed behind us. Silas and I stepped into the cool night air. I didn't look back. 9 o'clock the next morning, Genevieve's Mercedes pulled up to verdant horizons like she still owned the world. But she was wearing flats, not the Louboutins she'd had on last night. Flats. I noticed from inside the greenhouse, my hands deep in potting soil, repotting a Japanese maple that didn't need my attention right now, but gave me something to focus on besides the car door slamming. Hank intercepted her at the entrance. I heard his voice through the open windows, flat and professional. Boss isn't taking visitors. I need to speak with my daughter. Genevieve's voice cracked on the word daughter. Her makeup was smudged. She was wearing yesterday's dress, wrinkled across the bodice. I set down my pruning shears and wiped my hands on my jeans. Stepped into the doorway where she could see me. We need to talk, she said. Her eyes were red. We're family. I didn't look up from the branch I was examining. Family doesn't humiliate family publicly. The shears made a clean snip precise. A small branch fell to the workbench. Your father is devastated. Merrick won't speak to anyone. How can you do this to us? Snip. Another branch. I was shaping the maple into something beautiful, something that would take years to fully mature. Patience and discipline. We raised you better than this. That one almost got me. Almost. But I'd heard this song before. The guilt, the manipulation, the assumption that I owed them something beyond the $125,000 they never paid. I set down the shears, wiped my hands clean on a rag, reached into my back pocket and pulled out a business card, edges already worn from carrying it around since last night, knowing she'd come. I walked to the door and handed it to her. Bankruptcy attorney. Local. Good reputation. The lease was clear, Genevieve. I didn't call her mother. Payment terms were generous. 6 months of missed payments. We thought you'd understand. I'm not your daughter right now. The words tasted clean in my mouth. True. I'm your landlord. She stared at me. Her hand trembled holding the card. And you're trespassing. She turned and left without another word. And I was left alone, thinking how I will never let anyone destroy what I have built. 3 months later, I'm standing on the balcony watching workers take down the Miller Art Gallery sign. The metal scrapes against brick, and I feel nothing. No satisfaction, no bitterness. Just the morning sun, warm on my shoulders, and the weight of my own building beneath my boots. Verdant horizons. Headquarters. Sarah reads from the new sign as workers hoisted it into place. Never thought we'd have offices with a view. Hank joins us. Coffee in hand. He passes me a cup without asking if I want one. He knows I do. Boss. The $8,000 bonsai looks perfect in the window. I glance back through the glass. The juniper sits in the main office, backlit by the eastern sun. Every needle visible. 5 years of work. Competition winner. Finally displayed where people can see it. Where it deserves to be seen. It deserves to be seen, I say. Silas arrives with his leather portfolio, footsteps echoing in the new space. Preston and Genevieve signed the settlement this morning. Merrick moved to Boston. No forwarding address. I nod. Take a sip of coffee. The information lands without weight. They're gone. And I'm still here. And that's enough. The office walls behind me hold photographs now. Completed landscapes. Happy clients standing in gardens I designed with my own hands. No family photos. The mud crew. Silas. The people who chose me. That's family enough. Business is thriving. 3 new commercial contracts signed last week. After Silas leaves and the crew goes back to work, I stand alone on the balcony at sunset. Look down at my boots. Still dusty from this morning's site visit. Still caked with honest dirt. I remember Preston's slideshow joke. Just dig holes. The smile comes without bitterness. Those holes became gardens. That mud built this. Behind me, the bonsai catches the last light through the window. Its shadow falls across my shoulders like wings spreading. Dark and certain. I reclaimed my garden, I whisper. My phone buzzes. New client inquiry. I answer without hesitation. Verdant horizons. Delilah Miller speaking. My name. No apology in it. No shame. Just mine. The building gleams in twilight around me. Same balcony where they stood laughing, mocking the mud girl. Now mine. Openly. Legally. Completely.